Hello and welcome back to another episode of USC Trojans on Fan Nation. I'm your host, Jacob Erlbaum, joined by my co-host, Jacob Hare. And no game for the Trojans last week, and that leaves us plenty of room to talk about a huge game in the Pac-12. The Oregon Ducks took down previously number 9 ranked UCLA Bruins, and that is a huge win for the Ducks in the Pac-12. And also, it's going to make a big splash for the rest of the Pac-12, as now UCLA has one loss, Oregon has one loss in the season, USC has one loss in the season, and this Pac-12 is certainly up for grabs. Any of those three teams, even Utah you could throw in there, can win this conference.
Well, I mean, Oregon really just dominated UCLA in every aspect of the game. They dominated in time of possession. They dominated in total yards. And look, Bo Nix, he had an up and down career at Auburn. He came over to Oregon this season. Week 1, he got blown out. He got embarrassed by Georgia. But really, he's flipped the script ever since that Week 1 loss. So Bo Nix has honestly put himself in the Heisman conversation. And this win for Oregon just means there's not going to be a team from the Pac-12 in the playoffs. I mean, look, there's a possibility. There's a lot of things that need to happen, but there's way too many chess pieces that need to be moved around in order for the Pac-12 to get a team. And it's the reason why UCLA and USC are leaving the Pac-12, because I want to make a little analogy right now. Bo Nix, he's a good quarterback. I mean, he was solid at Auburn. I said he was up and down, but this year he's been facing really weak competition, and he's looked fantastic. I mean, he's looked like one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. But if he stayed in the SEC for that 4th year that he was eligible for, do you really think he would be having the season? No. I mean, this is a guy who's just playing against bad competition and dominating. So the competition in the Pac-12 hasn't been there. And honestly, over a decade, it's been really weak. So look, the Pac-12 right now is a conference. It's kind of laughable at this point that it's been, 5 years since they put a team in the college football playoffs. I think UW was the last team to make it when they got blown out by Alabama. So it's been a rough season for the Pac-12. I mean, a lot of exciting games. I love talking Pac-12 football, but on a national standpoint, it's been a hard season for the conference.
Yeah, definitely. But I still think Oregon, since that first loss of the season, they've been a dominant team. They've been beating opponents by a lot. I think ever since getting blown out themselves in Week 1, not just blown out, flat out embarrassed 49-3 against the Georgia Bulldogs, the defending national champions. And they are the defending national champions. A lot of teams do get embarrassed by Georgia. This Oregon team has really turned it around, and I love how you honed in on Bo Nix. He has been flat out incredible. 2 interceptions, no touchdowns in the first game. How about this? Since that, over his last 6 games, 17 passing touchdowns, just 1 interception, and then to add on to that, 8 rushing touchdowns as well. He has been incredible, and he certainly has put himself in the Heisman conversation. 25 total touchdowns over the last 6 games. That's just ridiculous. Those numbers are absurd, and if he continues this, he could easily win this Heisman. Obviously, a lot of other great candidates with Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud and that team certainly looking poised for another run at winning possibly another national championship. But I think Bo Nix, don't sleep on him. Don't sleep on this Oregon Ducks team. They I don't know if they're gonna be able to get into the college football playoff if they do somehow win out and win the Pac-12 just because of that loss to start the season. But still, an impressive team, an impressive turnaround from what could have been a really deflating loss. They said, nope, we're not going to let that happen. That's not going to be us. We have a lot to play for still. And they've shown it, and they've really, really been able to lean on this quarterback in Bo Nix, the senior.
Well, I mean, I want to talk about Bo Nix. Look, Bo Nix has been impressive, but I said it earlier. He wasn't that great in SEC competition, and he ran away from the best competition in the world to play mid-tier competition. I mean, let's say Bo Nix was playing in the Pac-12 for 3 years, and he made the jump to the SEC where he transferred, and he was balling out there. I'd be very impressed, but Bo Nix is a guy who struggled in the SEC, and now he's balling out in the Pac-12. So is it really that impressive that he's putting up these numbers against weak competition? I mean, look, Bo Nix is having a great year. Oregon's having a very, very good year. Dan Lanning is one of the best head coaching hires from this past offseason. I was very high on him going into the year, and I thought that erase the Georgia loss, just throw the tape out, burn it. Oregon's a great team. They're complete. They have a good running game. They have a good defense. Bo Nix's dual threat ability has really, really provided a spark for this offense that they didn't have last year. So Bo Nix is impressive, but is it really that impressive that he's going off against the Pac-12? I mean, can I really
I'm
give
gonna
the guy that much credit for this?
I'm gonna have to argue with you because yes, of course the Pac-12, it's not the SEC, it's not the Big Ten, but it's still good competition. Obviously, there's some teams that are much worse than others. It's not like you have the SEC where you have teams that are in the rankings like spread out throughout. Teams ranked 20th, teams ranked 23rd, teams ranked in the teens and the tens, stuff like that throughout. There's a few teams that are ranked in the Pac-12, and then the rest is sort of just teams that are either decent mid-tier teams like a Washington State type team, or teams like Arizona or Arizona State that are just terrible, quite to be to put it in plain and simple terms. But I think if you look at what Bo Nix and this Oregon offense has done, they've scored they've scored 41 or more points in 6 straight games. Like, it doesn't matter who you're playing. If you're able to do that, especially when you're playing competition that's weaker, that's what you expect. So at the end of the day, if they were playing weaker competition and he was struggling and they were still winning games, it's not like he's struggling and they're winning games. They're going out there and they're rolling these defenses. They're showing that they're a good team, and that just because they have to play this weak competition, they're doing what they should, what you'd expect of a good team against weaker competition. And Bo Nix has been really good. He's taking advantage of his new situation in Oregon. And I think at the end of the day, yes, is the competition in the Pac-12 weaker? 100% undeniable. But still, that should not negate the fact that this Oregon offense behind their senior quarterback Bo Nix has been really good and is definitely a premier offense in all of college football.
But I mean, the best team that Oregon faced this year was an SEC team, Georgia, who they got flat out embarrassed by. So I mean, when you're putting Bo Nix up against the top players, and if Oregon really has a shot at the college football playoffs, which, look, a lot of things need to work out, and we'll see. It week by week, survive and advance in college football. That's my theory. But if Bo Nix has to go up against a Georgia, a Tennessee, and Alabama, he's gonna get embarrassed. I mean, they know this guy. They embarrassed him for 3 years. Georgia beat him 49-3. His best win of the year was against UCLA. Look, UCLA is a good team, but they're not a great team. They're a great team in the Pac-12, but they're not a great national team. So, I mean, look, I'm not going to negate the fact that Bo Nix is having a fantastic year, as you said. Let's give him his credit, but it's against weak competition. So I really don't know if Bo Nix is legit or if he's fake. If this is going to be something that he can do, if they somehow sneak into the college football playoffs and he makes a statement, call me wrong. But at this point, I'm still standing by the fact that he's just going off against weak competition.
Hey, I hear what you're saying, but time will tell. We'll see what happens. If they do somehow sneak in the college football playoff, depending on who they play, whether it be an Ohio State, a Michigan, a Georgia again, an Alabama, Tennessee, one of those teams, Clemson even, we'll see how he fares this time around. I think that loss early in the season, had it been a close game, Oregon certainly is in the conversation to make the college football playoff. I think if Oregon lost to Georgia by a score or by even 2 scores, if they go on to run the table and win the rest of their games and win the Pac-12 as going 11-1, I think this is a team that could have certainly gotten into the college football playoff. But the fact that they lost 49-3, I think that will probably hold them out if they do end up going and running the table here. But at the end of the day, still, as you said it, let's give credit where credit's due.
Wait. Let me just make one quick point before we move on. Let's look at Hendon Hooker, for the quarterback from Tennessee, transferred from Virginia Tech. He was solid at Virginia Tech, and then he goes over to Tennessee, and now he's playing against the best competition in the world. That's a guy who I'm going to give credit, the guy who's lighting up the SEC. Hooker is a guy that is leading Tennessee to a potential playoff berth. I mean, in the SEC, this is just something that I don't feel like he's getting enough recognition. I mean, I know last week Tennessee was the biggest thing, but the fact that what Hooker has been able to do in his, during this short time that he's been at Tennessee, has been unbelievable. So, I mean, that's a guy that I want to give credit for. And it just helps my Bo Nix argument that Bo Nix couldn't do anything in 3 years in the SEC. And then you get Hooker, who comes over and transfers, and he's already taking a team to a potential playoff berth.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to knock on Bo Nix for not succeeding in the SEC and then switching over to a lesser conference in the Pac-12 and suddenly taking off. But I still think you can't make that argument and have that be your main argument that he didn't succeed in the SEC, because he was on good Auburn teams, but they weren't great Auburn teams. And at the end of the day, he wasn't terrible. He wasn't awful. his situation wasn't so good. There's a lot going on surrounding Auburn. He lost a coach while he was there, and I think when you look at it, he went now to Oregon. Definitely a better situation for him, and he's certainly taken advantage of that. But we'll see what happens with the Ducks in their season. And at the end of the day, we love talking about Oregon. We love talking about UCLA, but this is a USC Trojans podcast. So let's get into Arizona coming up this week. The Trojans, off the loss against Utah, need to get back in the win column. It's a must-win game. Their first loss of the season, certainly a huge loss for them. And now coming up, facing Arizona, a team that is not very good. You'd expect the Trojans to win this one pretty handily, but you never know in the Pac-12. It's a conference game. Anything can happen. What are you looking forward to the most this weekend with USC?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing in this game is going to have to be USC just throwing the ball. I mean, they have to get the ball in the air because Arizona is the worst passing defense that USC will face all season. They allow over 330 yards per game passing. Arizona is a team that has an underrated offense. I mean, Jaden DeLoria has been very solid for the Wildcats this year. And I mean, I think he could give them a little bit of trouble. But I just think that look, we don't know the status of Addison for this week. We're not sure. Who knows? But we've been talking about this a lot the past couple of weeks. The wide receiver room is deep. I mean, a lot of the transfers they got over, like Brandon Rice, Mario Williams, and I mean, I know they had Taj Washington. Those are guys that are going to need to have big games. And Caleb, he's a magician. He's going to be able to elevate those guys to make sure that they are up to par to beat this Arizona team, because this is just not a good Arizona team. This is a team with a very weak defense and many holes in the offense. I mean, besides wide receiver Jacob Cowing, who has been terrific for the Wildcats, they don't really have much on offense otherwise. And I mean, Deloria has been great this year, but look, you can stop him. He's a guy that you can slow down in the pocket. So I'm not worried too much about it, but I think that USC just needs to get the passing game going early, and they need to get Travis Dye involved in the screen game, because that's something that they were missing a lot in the Utah game. So I'm looking forward to seeing Travis Dye more involved this week in the passing game too.
Yeah, and you talk about USC's passing game and the loss of Jordan Addison. We still don't know what Addison's status is for this game. And if he doesn't play, you just have to hope that this offense doesn't stutter, the passing game doesn't stutter and doesn't lose a step. And I think you talked about the receiving depth. You talked about Mario Williams. You talked about Taj Washington. Those are guys that are going to have to step up if Addison can't play. And also Travis Dye, being a good pass catcher out of the backfield, that will also be huge for the Trojans. And if this Addison injury is something that could be longer term and he misses more than just this game, playing a weaker passing defense like Arizona, this is something you have to take advantage of, because you can start to get those guys involved. You can get your passing game going. They haven't played. It'll be 2 weeks since they last played after Utah when it comes to the game on Saturday. And I think getting this passing game going, you have a great opportunity to do it against a bad passing defense. And if you have a guy like Addison not in the lineup, it'll give the chance to get these other guys going, get their legs going, get their hands going, get the chemistry going with quarterback Caleb Williams, because obviously Addison has been the guy. He's been Caleb Williams' guy. And if he's out, it's going to have to come down to Taj Washington, Mario Williams being the two guys that really step up. And this could be a game to get them going and sort of help propel USC down the road.
I mean, I definitely agree with you that those are going to be the guys that they have to get going. And let's not forget, Arizona has allowed 49 points in 3 out of their last 4 outings. 49 points. I mean, this is a game where USC just has to light up the scoreboard. This is a get-right game. I mean, they're coming off the emotional loss to Utah. They're coming off a bye week too. Arizona, I mean, they're also coming off a bye week. But USC just has to go out and just score the ball. I mean, they can't settle for field goals. They have to put the ball in the end zone. And I'm really looking forward to a big game from Mario Williams. I know I predicted it last week in the Utah game, and I was right. He had a great game. I think he's going to have another big game, because I think he can tear apart that weak Arizona secondary with his ridiculous speed. Look, this is going to be a game that USC should go in from the start and just dominate on every side of the ball.
Yeah, and I think also, when you look at who Arizona has beat this season, they beat Colorado, who very well might be one of the bottom 3 teams in all of Division I college football. And then they beat North Dakota State, an FCS team, and then San Diego State, who's also right there at the bottom with Colorado. So it's really an Arizona team that's not very good. And you talked about how they've given up 49 points in 3 of the last 4 games. Before that, they still give up 28 points to North Dakota State. They give up 39 points to Mississippi State. So this is not just the last 4 games that this has been going on. It's been really all season since the beginning. So I think when you look at it, this is certainly a chance for this USC offense to explode. But I want to turn it over to the defense. We talked about the defense. Every episode we talked about the defense and how can they be good enough to get them to the college football playoff. I apologize. And frankly, we haven't seen that. Obviously, in the loss against Utah, we definitely didn't see that. And I think if you're the USC defense, this is the game where you have to play well. The past 2 games, it really hasn't looked pretty. It's been a struggle, and it really blew up on their faces against Utah. Now, this is it. You have to come out. You have to play well from the beginning. You need to play a full 60 minutes of football. And against a bad team like Arizona, bad performance is unacceptable. If you let Arizona to come out and score 20, 25 points, I think that is a really bad look for this team. And I'm looking for this USC defense to make a statement and say that we hear the critics, we know that we've struggled, but we're ready to get back on track, ready to show them that we are a good defense.
And now I also want to point out that Arizona only has 9 sacks on the season. So this is going to be a game where the offensive line has to hold up. Look, the offensive line versus defensive line, or Arizona's defensive line versus USC's offensive line is going to be like David versus Goliath. You cannot let the weaker link win in these situations. I mean, USC has to give Caleb Williams more time. I mean, I know he's a magician and he was making plays that we've seen Patty Mahomes make in the NFL, but look, just get Caleb comfortable. I mean, this is just a game where you have to go out and you have to dominate on every asset of the game, even the little things. You have to win the turnover battle. You have to win time of possessions. You have to win total yards. You can't make mistakes. And I do not want them to settle for field goals because this Arizona team, I know they can score the ball, but look, I don't see this as a trap game. We thought Oregon State could be a trap game we were talking about a few weeks ago. And honestly, it did look like a trap game at one point. But this is a game where you got to go out and just show the weaker team that you're the alpha and that you're going to destroy them from the opening kickoff.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think if you're USC, the main focus you can't be hanging your head on that loss to Utah last week. This team has to say, let's look forward to winning this game. You can't be looking forward to UCLA, Notre Dame games at the end of the season. Right now, the next game up on their schedule is the Arizona Wildcats. I don't care what their record is. I don't care how bad they've been, how good they've been. Their focus has to be on winning this game and fixing the mistakes that they made against Utah and getting back on track and putting this season back where they want it to be as a top team in college football. Certainly, it sucks for them that they lost to Utah a few weeks ago, but they know that this is a huge game for them in turning their season around, because I know it feels like this for a lot of these players. It might feel like this is a lost season. The college football playoff is the expectation. We talked about it in last week's episode with the college football playoff being the expectation, and this loss almost not eliminating them from college football playoff contention, but really it's going to be tough for them to get in. And now you have to say this isn't a lost season. We have to go out and just win the next game, and then we'll focus on the next game after that. And the college football playoff, that's in December. You worry about that when you have to worry about that. Right now, you worry about Arizona. It's October 24th today. It'll be Arizona this weekend, and that's the focus. October right now, Arizona, college football playoff, that'll be decided in December. That's not the focus right now. Pac-12 games at the end of the season, that's not the focus right now. The focus is the next game, getting right, getting back on track, and moving forward.
I totally agree with you there. I mean, I know us as fans and the media perception of this team is that they probably weren't going to make the college football playoffs. But in that locker room, I can guarantee you they were telling them from the first time that they stepped on the field together for a summer or spring practice, college football playoffs were the expectation. So, I mean, look, we don't see it as an expectation, but in every professional sport, the goal is to win a championship. The goal is not to go to the Rose Bowl. The goal is not to play in a good bowl game. The goal is to win the championship. And look, I 100% agree with what you're saying. You can't focus on that. That's in December. The only thing that you can do is prepare for the Arizona Wildcats, go out and beat them. There's nothing else that they can control right now except winning this game.
Yep, totally agree with you. And on that note, I think, and do you have any final notes you want to make before we say goodbye and look forward to the game this weekend?
I think Arizona is going to extend the streak, that they're going to allow 49 points in 4 out of their last 5 games. I think this defense is a complete mess. The secondary, it looks helpless most of the time. So I think that USC wins very easily.
I'll add on to that. I think this defense for USC is going to get back on track. I'm going 56-10 USC, a blowout. A blowout win where the offense is great and the defense does a good job too. And we'll see what happens on Saturday. USC taking on the Arizona Wildcats. We will be back next Tuesday with another episode. For now, I'm your host, Jacob Erlbaum. Jacob Hare, my co-host. Thank you for joining us. Go Trojans. We'll see you next week.
Fight on.